Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD challenge. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Wednesday afternoon. We've made it through half the week, which is always exciting. Can't wait to kick off another XD challenge. Today, we're going to be talking all about landing pages. We're going to be building one out specifically for a travel service, but of course, if you feel comfortable, build it out for whatever you want. It is Pride Month, so build a Pride landing page, build one for knitting, build one for chips and water. I don't know, whatever it might be that interests you, build out a fancy landing page, and I can't wait to see all of your amazing work. All right, I'm gonna switch over to my screen, which hopefully will work today. And if you are tuning in live, hello live people, and Rick and Laura and Sam and John and everyone else joining, great to see you all. If you want to participate, there is a link in the description of this video. You can download the sample file or behance.net/challenge/XD. We also have challenges for Photoshop and Illustrator and sometimes After Effects and all sorts of fun stuff. All right, scroll down all the way down here. Marketing banners was the first one. Event invites was yesterday. And landing page is today. And we're going to be designing a landing page for a travel experience. Use a full width image or video to help showcase destinations. And I'll remind all of you, like I did earlier, if you feel comfortable, definitely take it in whichever direction you want. And you don't have to, do a full width image or a video. You can do a half width image or whatever it is that works for your particular landing page. All right, grab that sample file and boop, hopping over to XD. Looks like my screen is working great today. Here's our sample file. And again, we have our prompt right here at the top. We have some inspiration right down here, some landing pages. This one does not feature a full width image. This one over here to the right does. So definitely, have some fun with it. I didn't show off the resource booklet. Now this was originally created by Andrea Epi, but if you launch the prototype, scroll down, you can actually click through and see all these really fun resources, which is great. And like I mentioned, in these sets of challenges, I have included some tips. So this one in particular, if I launch this, it'll take you to a video where you can learn all about Lottie and video. This should actually say video. I messed that up, but this will take you to a video all about video in Adobe XD. So ignore the error, doesn't exist, right? Anyways. It's always fun when you realize your error is live on stream. All right, we're gonna get started with our landing page. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to feature a full width image or video on this landing page. So it might make sense to kick off with that element. So with the rectangle tool, shortcut key R, I'm gonna start at the top left-hand corner and view all the way across this artboard. And just so we can see it, I'll change the color to this beautiful color. Absolutely gorgeous. And what we want to do now is we want to place media inside of this particular rectangle. And the nice thing is, any sorts of shape, rectangles, squares, I guess kind of the same thing, circles, polygons, custom shapes can all be used as a mask. So if I hop over to Finder, boop, right over here, I have some images that I licensed from Adobe stock, and we're going to start with an image, and then we're going to progress onto a video shortly after. And we can just take an image and just drag it directly onto that rectangle. So if I grab, let's say this image here, I don't know where this is, but it looks beautiful. I'd love to go there one day. Boop, there we go. We now have an image inside of our shape, right? And I can double click on it and resize this and scale it if I need to. I can reposition it somewhere right in that area there. And looks pretty good. All right. Now, at the top of most landing pages, you have some form of navigation, and some are a little bit more simple than others. Some are a lot complex. They have a lot of links and things like that. We're going to kind of take a middle ground. We're going to have a few links, maybe some information over to the right. Now, in terms of the links, what we can do, let me actually go ahead and activate my guides, Command and Control, semicolon, and they should be active by default. Mine were off. I'm going to just drag out a guide. Let's say, I don't know, somewhere right about here. 125, probably not a great number, but we're going to run with it. Looks like Iceland. It could be Iceland. That could be it, Laura. All right, so we're going to start with the logo. Keep it very simple. With the text tool, shortcut key T, I'm going to just type out something like fly and then apostrophe R, like flyer, right? And in terms of the size, we probably don't want to go too large, somewhere around 40. And maybe I'll change the color to white for now. And then the typeface, I want to get a little bit fancy with this, and we're going to be using this typeface in the center of this landing page as well in just a moment. But there's a great typeface I found on Adobe Fonts called Blenny. Ooh, look at that. That's fancy, right? Now, if I hop over to Adobe Fonts for just a moment, I can type out Blenny. Not blend, Blenny. And there it is. Look at that type. That is fancy. That's a fancy typeface. So you can, license that and activate it. It'll sync to your computer and you'll be able to use it in your projects, which is wonderful, right? Now, the links over to the right. Let's start adding in a link. So the first link might be Explore. And it's going to be probably quite a bit smaller than our logo. And of course, if you have a logo that you've designed, you can use that as well in replacement of a text logo. Now, what we're going to notice is we made this a lot smaller. But if we were to have a bunch of links going across here, right, and launch the preview, those are very difficult to read. Not only are they very heavy, a lot heavier than they should be, but they're also very fancy and elegant. There's a lot going on. And as you make those text layers smaller and smaller and smaller, it's going to be a lot more difficult to read. So we want to probably go back to something a little bit more traditional. And you can use a typeface like Basic Sans, for example, or, of course you can use, just don't use Comic Sans. You can use Helvetica, you can use Astoria. I've been using Astoria a lot because it still has some fancy elements to it, but it's a lot more, traditional, right? So if I launch the preview, we can read that a lot better. I might want to drop the weight to maybe medium. So there's that. There's also, like I showed, Basic Sans, which is also a nice typeface. A little bit more simple than Astoria, right? And let's bump it up to maybe semi-bold. So they're very similar, but I think Astoria has some nice elements to it that we're going to run with. Now, when we talk about adding multiple links across our landing page, there are a few ways we can do it. A lot of people will gravitate towards the repeat grid for links. I would say stay away from that. Repeat grids are great if you're dealing with elements that are the same, including the same width. Now, it's highly unlikely that all of our links are going to be exactly the same width because they're all going to say different things. So in that case, what I would say is use a stack. So we have our Explore link active, right? I'm going to place this into a group, Command and Control G. And in my layers, I'm going to call this links. And then within the properties inspector over to the right, we're going to turn a stack on. Now, there's only one object and it defined it as a horizontal stack, which in this case is exactly what we want. But of course, you can switch it over to vertical if you need to. Now, once a stack is set up, I can dive in, duplicate, 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 and duplicate. And you're noticing the links are now being placed over to the right automatically, which is great. And you wouldn't get that if you were not working with a stack. Now, back within the properties inspector, we can also control the distance those links appear, right? We can either enter a number like 72, or we can bump it up, or we can use our shift key and our arrow keys to space them out. We'll get back to that in a moment, but I'm going to dive in here and type out something like destinations. And what's really nice is when you're working with a stack, it automatically resizes as you are making those changes. Packages, lights, and maybe reviews, right? There we go. Now we have our links. And I'm going to grab this group and just shift it over to the center of this particular design. You can also use the alignment and distribution options right here at the top as well. And then finally, right over to the right, we may want some icon. You'll often see like a profile icon, maybe a search icon, a cart possibly. So if I hop over to my plugins down here at the bottom, I do have the icons for design plugin installed. If you don't have, you can go back and press that plus button, and we'll start with something like search. And there's a lot of different search icons that we can use. The one from Feather is always really fancy and nice. I'm gonna make that a little bit smaller. Now this one in particular is a border-based icon, which is sometimes really nice because you can adjust the size of that width as you need to. I think it looks pretty good. And then we'll add one more, let's say a user icon. And this one from Awesome is awesome, right? Now this one's not a border-based icon, which is fine. So I'm going to just make that a little bit larger, position it over here, and we'll change that to white as well. Now this is another good opportunity to use a stack. So if I select both of these icons, place them into a group, activate a stack. Once again, it did define it as horizontal, and I can space these out as I need to. Maybe let's go about 32 for sticking, 32, maybe even 40, just to give a little bit of breathing room. And I didn't show this when I was creating the links, but one of the benefits of using a stack is being able to very easily rearrange objects. So I can dive in here and swap the position of these, or I can go over to my links and do the exact same thing, which is very helpful. All right, so our nav bar is looking pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and select the icons group, the links group, and our logo over to the left. I'm going to group all of that and just call this nav. Now, if you do get to the point where you want to make this landing page a little bit longer, right? So if I select this landing page and drag the handle downwards, you're going to notice we have our viewport handle over to the left, and that will determine what's visible when you launch the prototype or above the fold, and what's visible when you start scrolling. Now, if you want your nav bar to remain fixed as you're scrolling down your artboard, over to the right, you can enable fixed position when scrolling. So if you play that, you're going to notice it now is fixed. Now, we may not get to this today, maybe we will, but you're going to notice because I have nothing behind that navigation bar, in some areas, like right about here, it's very difficult to see this word where it says explore, right? So you have to keep these things in mind as you're building out these landing pages. You might want to put an overlay behind the navigation bar. You might want to put a nice blurred background. A lot of different things you can put back there, but definitely keep those things in mind. All right, let's undo, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the center. Now, usually when you have a landing page, you have a nice large call to action or some sort of a header. We may want to do something like that, and we can use the Blenny typeface one more time. So if I go ahead and type out something like adventure, right? Make this nice and large by pulling on this handle, just like that. And I'm going to switch over to the Blenny typeface one more time. Of course, there are a lot of really nice typefaces that you can use that are similar to Blenny or completely different, completely up to you, right? And in terms of the size, it's not a terrible size. I might want to just drop it down a little bit. I'm going to make sure to center it. And because this typeface is very blocky, sometimes it could be a little bit difficult to read, even when it's nice and large. So I might want to actually space out the characters a little bit. So I can hold down my shift key and kind of shove that up, or I can just enter a value, let's say 300, and just space that out a touch. And then over top, we may want to add one more line of text, something like it's time to, right? And I'm going to make that all caps. Definitely want that quite a bit smaller, and it's going to be in the center. We may not necessarily need as much spacing in between, so I might drop that to maybe 150. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the links. When we initially set the links up, we were using the Blenny typeface one more time. A little bit difficult to read. So I think in this case, I'm going to go back to the Astoria typeface and maybe bump up the weight from bold, maybe to semi or to extra bold. We'll see what that looks like. And that's not looking too bad. I might want to just to make things nice and lined up. Maybe. I don't know if that's too large. It might be too large. Let's drop it down a little bit more. Now again, you might run into the problem where you have text, but behind the image is, a lighter area or a darker area, and it becomes a little bit difficult to read. So you might want to put some sort of an overlay back there. If necessary, you can also drop the opacity of your image that's in the background. But for the most part, I think this right here isn't too bad. But once we start adding the video, it might be a bit of a different story. Now, speaking of that video, there may be times where you want a landing page that's a little bit more dynamic. Right now it doesn't look too bad. We have this nice image in the background. We have some text. We have some links at the top. We have a great logo. It doesn't really move though. It doesn't do anything, right? So what we might want to do is replace this image with a video. Now, because this shape is technically already masked, we cannot go over to Finder, grab a video, and place it in. It's just not going to work. So what we have to do in this case is just remove the image from the shape. And you can do that just by changing the color of the shape to basically anything, right? And that'll remove that image. Now, if we go over to Finder, I do have some images here from Adobe Stock and other sources. All you have to do is drag a video directly onto a shape, just like we did earlier with the video, or the photo, I should say. Now, I will mention that there are some limitations with the videos. Currently, XD supports MP4s up to 20 megabytes in file size. We did bump up that file size limit, which is always really nice. But it works very similar to imaging, right? You can double click into it. Now, they are object masks versus shape masks, but you can, increase the size of this if you need to. And that looks pretty good. But what you will notice that you don't have with photos is over to the right within the Properties Inspector, you have some additional options. You can choose how you want this video to play back. You'll have similar options with Lottie animations as well, which we will cover on Friday on challenge number 5. You want it to play on tap, play automatically, or no playback at all. Now in this case, we want the video to play back right when the prototype launches. So we're going to choose play automatically. And then right over here, you can activate the heads-up display, which has more customization options. At the top left-hand corner, we can choose a thumbnail. So in this case, thumbnail probably won't benefit. We won't benefit from a thumbnail because the video is going to play back automatically. But if there is a case where you have it set to no playback or playback on tap, then the thumbnail will display until that video does play back. Down at the bottom, you can scrub through the video. Look how silky smooth that is. You can play the video. If the video contains audio, you can turn that audio off or back on. You can also trim the video, which is really cool. So if you have a video that's a little bit too long, or you wanted to start it at a certain location, you can very easily do that. So maybe right about here, we'll just trim the video. And it's all non-destructive, so we can always dive back in there and make changes if we need to. And we can loop the video if we want to. Now, I'm purposely not going to turn looping on, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But we have our video in place, and all we have to do now is press the play button at the top, boop, and there it goes. So just by adding a video, a piece of media back there, it's all of a sudden become a lot more dynamic. And I think users who will land on your landing pages and see this video will just kind of take an extra second to kind of watch it and see what it looks like. And especially if you're designing for like a travel landing page, right? It gives you an opportunity to showcase some of those different destinations. But you may want to showcase a few of those destinations, right? This is just one. Now, this is one of the reasons why I turned off looping, because I might want, after this video finishes playing back, I might want it to automatically transition to another video. And to do that, we're going to utilize components. So I have this mask group selected, which I'm going to call video. And what I want to do is I want to turn this entire component or mask group into a component. So you can do that within your Properties Inspector over to the right inside of your document assets right over here. There's a component, or you can do the Command or Control K shortcut, right? And it's going to create that as our main component. So any changes we want to make to this, we're going to want to make on our main component. So with our component set up, what we'll want to do now is create the second state, which is going to be our second video. So back over to the right within the Properties Inspector, we're going to press that plus button. We can create a new state, a hover state, a toggle state. In this case, we just want a simple new state. And I'm going to call this, let's say, video 2. Very original, I know. And here we can start replacing the content that's going to be on state 2. Now, in this case, all we have to replace is the video. Now, unlike with a photo, we can drag a video on top of another video to replace it. So let's see, this video, that's not bad. We have puppies, which is always amazing. Now, I want to choose the puppy video because puppies, right? But what you're going to notice is they're white puppies, and we have white text in the foreground, so it might cause some problems, but let's try it, right? Because puppies. There's also this one over here. Oh. All right, let's drag this onto this video, and there we can already start to see some of the problems. Now, in this case, we could potentially move this up, but now we have some problems up here. But maybe we'll get back to what we were talking about earlier about putting an overlay behind the navigation bar. But again, keep that in mind. Now, when you drag a new video onto an old video, you'll want to make sure, especially in a different state, to set your playback options. So play automatically. We do not want it to loop in this case. And let's see what this looks like before we start messing with the components. That looks pretty good. Now what we can also do is we can place this text into our component as well, into the main state, so we can change the text from state to state. We might get to that, we'll see, but definitely, you know, an idea that you can run with when you're creating your landing pages. All right, so we have video default state and we have video 2. Let's do one more. This will be video 3, and we'll switch back over to Finder, and it's not too bad. Sounds pretty fancy. Let's see what this is going to look like with the text. Okay, not too bad. I think that could potentially work. We're kind of pushing definitely at the top here, but we're going to get back to that in just a moment. So we have video. I want to make sure to play automatically. So we have our default state, we have video 2, and we have video 3. Now the big question is, how do we make it automatically transition from the default state to video 2 and then to video 3? Because if I play this back right now, we're going to watch this beautiful animation and this video. It's going to get to the end and nothing is going to happen. It's just going to stop, right? Which obviously we don't want. And just to show you, it's going to... I should probably cut this video so it's a little bit shorter, but there it goes, right? It stopped. Let me actually make that a little bit shorter. Non-destructive trimming, always good, right? There we go. I probably should apply that. Beautiful. All right, so what we're going to do is we want to hop into prototype mode right here at the top left-hand corner. And we want to utilize the end of playback trigger, which is available on videos and Lottie animations. Now, if I dive in here and select the video inside of my layers panel, what you're going to notice over on the right-hand side of the video, and if it's scaled, you might have to scroll over to the right a little bit, we have our initial interaction. And this allows the video to play back automatically when the artboard loads. But we want to add another interaction. So if I press the plus button over to the right, we can set up another interaction. So I'm going to go ahead and choose, instead of a tap trigger, we want an end of playback trigger, which is going to trigger the interaction after the video or Lottie animation completes, as long as looping is not turned on. So I'm going to choose that. And then the action itself, we don't really need any auto animate because nothing's really animating. So a simple transition, we're going to choose our destination, which is video number 2, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a dissolve, nothing too crazy. We'll see what that looks like. And then we can go to video number 2. We can do the exact same thing, click, and then transition to video number 3. And then from video number 3, we can actually go back to video number 1. Let's go back to our default state. And now that that is all set up, we can once again, preview our prototype, and watch to see what happens. So if all went well, once this video does complete, it should automatically transition to the second video. There it goes. There's a little bit of a fade. I would probably increase the length of that fade or just remove the fade completely. But these are things you can very easily make changes to later on. We're definitely seeing a little bit of accessibility issues at the top, which we'll get to in just a moment. And there's video number 3. And then once this one completes, it should automatically transition back to video number 1. Don't remember exactly, there we go, right? Now, before we wrap up, tackling that accessibility issue, we can definitely see it in this area here. The white on the very light blue, not ideal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, over top of this, I'm going to just grab my rectangle tool, draw one out, make sure to move it behind the navigation bar. And then we'll probably, in this case, there's a few ways we can do it, right? I did mention a background blur, which is always kind of fancy. We can change this to maybe black, darken that, bring that up a little bit. You got to really finesse this into place, but it doesn't look too bad, right? Or we can use a gradient. So maybe at the top, we'll have a nice dark color. Maybe we can add a little bit of blue in there. And the bottom will do something very similar, but the bottom color is actually going to be dropped all the way to 0% opacity. Now, you probably don't want to leave it like this. It looks very harsh. So you can try and experiment with a blend mode like soft light, which helps a little bit, but you'll definitely have to, either adjust the color or try a different blend mode, overlay, for example. It could work. Or you can just, experiment with the opacity if you don't want to experiment with blend mode. So drop that a little bit, even something like 20%, and then bring this down a touch more. It's still not perfect. Definitely probably would not pass accessibility at this point, but keep these things in mind. Use the Stark plugin to check for accessibility, but it does help, right? So once again, before we wrap things up, we're going to go back to our default state, and here we go. So as this is playing, I hope you all enjoyed this challenge. I can't wait to see what you all create. Definitely submit it on Discord or on Behance. You can also tweet me at Pinsky. Use videos, use photos, use all sorts. You can also combine photos and videos, which is kind of fun. Use puppies, use donkeys, use whatever you want, right? Have fun with this challenge. Go in whatever direction you like, and can't wait to see what you all produce. And I'm going to be back for another challenge tomorrow. Tomorrow we are talking about smart home devices, which is going to be kind of fun. We don't do much of that on Adobe Live, but it's going to be a good time. So thanks everyone, and I will see you all next time.